Chapter 6. The Way of the Warrior. A soldier is not necessarily a warrior. A soldier, whether he is an army regular or a soldier of fortune, is often primarily a mercenary. If he kills for pay and without caring who pays him, he is a killing machine. A warrior may have to kill, but killing is the outcome of a warrior's commitments, his vision of world making, and his disciplined quest to serve a transpersonal other. While capable of killing when necessary, a warrior knows the real war is within. A man who appropriately accesses the archetypal warrior draws upon enormous resources that enable him to live an empowered life in the service of his fellow creatures. He embodies the characteristics of the fully expressed warrior. What are these characteristics? The warrior is alive, vivid, fairly crackling with energy from the sacred dimension. When the warrior is online, we feel a rush of blood and adrenaline, a quickening heartbeat, and a sense of something momentous about to happen. We feel mobilized for action, ready to charge forward to meet life head on. Our daily concerns fall away from us, and we are swept up into a kind of ecstasy in which we see ourselves and the world with a sharpened focus and clarity. Hidden rage is transmuted into energized courage. We come into touch with the great mystery of life and death, and we feel a strange sense of pleasure in the midst of pain. When Patton, as portrayed in the movie, stands among the ruins of his tank corps after the Battle of Kasserine, he is caught up in this warrior ecstasy. He is drunk with the sights and sounds of dead and dying men, burning tanks, and barking dogs. He takes a deep breath, filling his lungs with the stench of gasoline and burned flesh. He stands tall, sighs, and says, "God help me, I do love it so." In states of mind like this one, Patton wrote ecstatic poetry affirming his belief in reincarnation and his conviction that he had lived in many epochs and fought in the great battles of history. He seems to literally relive these battles and to see them through the eyes of the eternal warrior. Every man knows the ecstasy of the warrior. Many of us have been in actual combat. We have spent sleepless nights on the eve of battle, filled with anxiety and anticipation. We think with nostalgia of our loved ones and our personal lives, now being swept aside by life and death events that call upon us to subordinate our egos to a greater good, a higher cause. We have felt the rush of adrenaline and that strange mix of terror and eagerness that approaches awe. Whether or not we knew it, we touched the mystery of the sword, and were one with the initiates of the ancient cave sanctuaries. With lesser intensity, perhaps, we have known the warrior in more mundane circumstances. Packing for the make-or-break business trip, preparing the keynote political address, driving the last bolt into the skyscraper's steel frame, proposing a marriage or a divorce. The warrior is an energy resource, one that permits us to be assertive about our lives, goals, needs, and causes. He gets us moving again after a period of stagnation. He supports us when we act from our real feelings and needs instead of from other people's expectations. Instead of our compulsively saying yes when we mean no, he directs us to responses that are in our strategic self-interest. If we say yes, under the warrior's aegis, we mean it. Self-psychologists talk about false self-organization, a concept similar to the Jungian persona. The false self or persona is the mask we wear in order to get along with others. Behind the mask we hide our true self, the vulnerable core of our soul. A man develops a false self early in life after his true self is attacked or ridiculed. A false self conforms to what others want and expect, so he believes by adopting this mask he will get at least some of the love and approval he needs for survival. The problem is that the false self becomes an automaton. Although it may be strategically necessary to use a mask from time to time, perhaps especially in childhood and adolescence, by adulthood the mask takes on a life of its own. The ego becomes its captive and loses touch with the true self, which is buried ever more deeply in the unconscious. A man may forget who he really started out to be. Life demands sooner or later that we regain contact with our true selves and begin to live out of them. If at this point a false self is too powerful and persuasive, we may be unable to meet life's demands for growing authenticity. The persona gets tired though, and the mask slips, because it takes an enormous amount of energy to keep up false appearances. But the real person we've concealed beneath the layers of false smiles, macho bluff, and histrionic affectations is reluctant to come out of hiding for fear of being attacked again as it was in childhood. The ego needs to call upon the warrior in order to protect the true self's gradual emergence. The warrior encourages the full expression of our total psychic system. He throws up a defensive shield to protect the consolidating identity. He puts a sword in the hand of the self to enable the new psychic integrity to be aggressive about its legitimate need for power and affirmation. The warrior helps to provide us with firm boundaries. After enabling us to build self-structures at the heart of our psychological territories, he helps us to control who and what will be permitted to influence the inner sanctum of the true self. He enforces a kind of camp perimeter and mans the boundaries of a cohesive psychological identity. He denies access to the unauthorized, invasive, or hostile forces, whether they be other human beings or psychological entities from the inner world. Men hear a lot of talk these days about their need to be vulnerable and their fear of intimate relationships. It is true that some men fear their own tenderness as well as their inner feminine, what Jung called the anima, which hinders them in their attempts to feel safe with women. But what most men fear isn't intimacy. They are starving for it. What they really fear is the destructive and hostile behaviors of others, which they have been taught are a part of intimate relationships. They fear being attacked for who they are. They fear sarcasm, ridicule, criticism, and depreciating remarks. Underlying these fears is the fear of being drawn back into a symbiotic merger with the all-powerful mother. We are right to fear being attacked as persons and as men, and we are correctly cautious about engaging in relationships that carry such a costly price tag. We are also appropriately wary of anything that smacks of regression into childhood passivity and domination at the hands of an unequally powerful feminine. We all begin quite literally at one with the feminine and are completely dependent upon it for our survival. Successfully achieving a masculine identity requires enormous work in terms of self-definition and boundary setting. Part of that work involves a break with an overly empathetic tie to our mother and her ways of being and doing. It includes a phase-specific rejection of feminine qualities. It necessitates the construction of defensive walls against an intimacy we have no choice but to associate with an inordinately powerful woman. The heroic stage of boyhood engages us in a titanic struggle to overcome the power of the mother, and at the same time to discover the limits of our masculine powers. Without the warrior, it is doubtful that we can ever succeed in these tasks. In adulthood, a man continues to need a defensive perimeter. He should not surrender it under the misguided notion that he is safe without it. Because of his hard-fought struggle to become a man, a legitimately autonomous adult male, he must be careful to build his intimate relationships with women out of a consolidated masculine structure. With firm boundaries in place, no relationship will challenge his psychological integrity. At the same time, this boundary setting can be taken too far. We do not want to create or maintain an impregnable barrier between ourselves and others. We should not become prisoners behind our own walls. We need to feel safe enough to let others in when we would like to. The warrior gives us the capacity to share our inner lives with those who merit our trust, and not with those who mean us harm. His perceptive acuity defends us against neurotic merging bonds, relationships now popularly called codependent. By providing us with secure boundaries, the warrior actually enhances our capacity for intimate relationships with women as well as with other males. The warrior also permits us the legitimate expression of controlled aggression. Many life situations call for aggressiveness. The business world, for example, abounds in such situations. Marketplace aggression is essential to the generation and distribution of wealth. But the aggression needs to be controlled. In recent years, we have been reminded what financial burdens result from the underhanded and duplicitous aggressive business practices. The insider trading scandal on Wall Street, the corrupt practices at the Chicago Board of Trade, the S&L catastrophe, and the growing insolvency of major banks following get-rich-quick schemes all point to warrior energy running wild. Many of us have been the victims of false advertising, whether from the car dealer or the televangelist whose aggressive impulses have far exceeded the natural control a concern for the greater good imposes. Yet the warrior's ambitious acquisitiveness can generate goods and services that make human life not only livable, but also healthier, more comfortable, and even psychologically and spiritually richer. There is also a useful aggressiveness that seeks to make our city streets safe. While there are unquestionably some abuses of police authority, the reality is that most of the men and women of our big city police forces are dedicated and well disciplined. Their expression of controlled force under often dangerous circumstances contributes significantly to the welfare of our society. We have all encountered situations in which we needed to be aggressive. If the school bully pushed us, we needed to fight back, to stop his attacks and to experience our own power in threatening situations. Even if we were beaten, a forceful response built courage and self-confidence. Our work lives frequently call upon our aggressive skills. A problem at a construction site may need to be, quote, attacked. A demanding customer may need to be confronted. In academia, another may try to plagiarize our ideas, and we may need to take self-assertive action in order to get our rightful acknowledgement. We may encounter chronic browbeating, ridicule, sarcasm, or dominating behavior from our wives or children. We need to stand up for ourselves firmly and resolutely. Crippling and killing diseases, natural disasters, environmental decay, the catastrophic troubles of our inner cities, corrupt social and political systems, injustice in the workplace, all call for an aggressive response from human beings willing to be warriors. The oppression of one class by another, of one race, one sex, one religion, one nation by another, these things too require a compelling reaction. In the Perk Avot, the Jewish sayings of the fathers, a peaceable young man asks a rabbi, "Are we not to forswear anger and live peacefully with all men?" The rabbi answers, "My son, God made anger for a purpose. If he had not intended for us to use it, he would not have put it in our souls. Only be careful how you spend your anger. There are many things we should not be angry about. We should save our anger for those things which demand it. We must be angry about these things if we are to do God's will." Unquote. The samurai held that a warrior's method is to attack and attack, always moving forward. He never gives up the vision of his mission. This defiant human quality is the essence of the human drive to conquer new frontiers. It is a warrior's willingness to charge into the unknown that moves the mind and soul of our species forward, claiming new territories, both mental and physical, and eventually perhaps even new planets for Homo sapiens to inhabit. Without the warrior, none of us would plow through the mountains of paperwork on our desks. We would be unwilling to make present sacrifices for future goals. We would not rouse ourselves to community action for a noble cause. We would not make every effort to overcome diseases like cancer and AIDS. Were it not for the warrior, though we would still dream our dreams, we would not have the will to make them come true. The warrior is the dynamic inspiration of the phallic thrust. A man who is appropriately accessing the warrior is filled with a sense of adventure. Perhaps he climbs a rock face that has never before been climbed, or perhaps he finds a new way to scale a familiar cliff, like the paraplegic rock climber at Yosemite. Perhaps he finds adventure using his computer, brainstorming for new ways to manufacture a product. Or his own imagination might provide his experience as he creates something new, useful, or beautiful. Perhaps he journeys into his inner landscape and explores the further reaches of his own mind. Adventure is by definition perilous. During an adventure, a man needs the courage the warrior provides. He may come up against any number of obstacles: fear, depression, malaise, despair, and even the possibility of death. There is a wonderfully illustrative scene in the movie Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, in which Captain Kirk is standing with Dr. McCoy and other crew members on a bluff overlooking an alien planet. Rescue is doubtful. Up in the sky they see their beloved starship Enterprise burning as it falls through the alien atmosphere. Kirk turns to McCoy and asks, "Bones, what have I done?" McCoy replies, "What you have always done: take an impossible situation and turn it into a fighting chance to live." This is the courage of the warrior. He gives us a fighting chance to live and to flourish. Men like Anwar Sadat and Mikhail Gorbachev called upon the warrior, unconsciously or consciously, and found the courage to do the unthinkable. If we are to recover our world from the brink of destruction, millions of us will need to draw upon the same archetypal warrior who inspired both of these leaders, as well as the fictional Captain Kirk. The warrior helps leaders develop their potentials. He is himself devoted to the archetypal king, and he recognizes men who similarly serve something greater than themselves. He provides energy reserves of determination, fidelity, courage, and self-discipline. Unfortunately, we do not have enough positive models of warrior-inspired leadership in our society. In the absence of formal, ongoing initiation practices, modern men have very little help maturing once they've passed adolescence. A lucky few find a mentor to help guide their search for a way to live productively. Most don't look for or never find a mentor, and as a result never learn to exercise responsible leadership, either at home or in the workplace. The contemporary phenomenon of the absent father is well known. Increasingly, fathers are unavailable to their children. The reasons are many. Some fathers feel an emotional distance from their children. Others are at a physical distance because of work demands, or separation, or divorce. Some learned how to be an absentee parent from their own fathers, who used alcohol or the office to keep life's problems as well as the blessings of relatedness at a distance. Similarly, men in the business world often seem to be treading water, padding their resumes and looking for an out rather than working to improve products, services, or the quality of their leadership for their corporation and community. They are happy to enjoy the salaries and benefits their firms provide. They like their suspendered uniforms. But when they make decisions, increasingly the end results are short-term windfall profits, and not the long-term health and integrity of either company or community. If the warrior is online at all in these circumstances, he is only supporting personal gain. And the men who are using his energy are merely mercenaries. What is true in the business world is true of other walks of life as well. Many school administrators have too long ignored the quality of education it is their responsibility to advance. They have not supported their teachers. They have caved into pressure from those parents who would rather lower academic standards than push their children to achieve. Despite graduate degrees in leadership, these administrators cannot seem to translate their training into courageous action. Many politicians in this and other countries are afflicted by the same malaise. So many problems face our society on local, state, national, and international levels. But as the media rightfully wonders, where is the leadership? Perhaps the way our political system is set up and financed works against the possibility of finding the men and women we need to have social problems realistically addressed. One thing is clear. We need political warriors willing to fight the good fight for our world. The East-West nuclear peril that seems to have abated only to give rise to regional powers that have developed terrible arsenals of their own chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons. National, racial, and religious wars rage on. The world drug trade flourishes with only token opposition. Environmental pollution and global warming continue apace, bearing a potentially catastrophic array of consequences. The dislocation of millions by retreating shorelines, the reduction of arable land, mass starvation, and political instability. Where are the armies of light of the true king? Evidently, meaningful, effective leadership requires a strength few men, even those already in leadership positions, are able to access or steward responsibly. The fully expressed warrior has the capacity to anesthetize us against pain and suffering. His anesthetic enables a man to withstand tremendous suffering for the sake of achieving a goal. Witness the athlete who pushes himself beyond the normal limits of physical and mental endurance. Boot camps and astronaut training programs are warrior schools. In even more grueling disciplines, Native Americans suffered the rigors of the sun dance in order to learn how to access the warrior's anesthetic. They found that there is a point of concentration beyond pain. Boys of almost every traditional society discover this point during the painful physical ordeals of the rite de passage. Many are the life circumstances we face that require us to find this painless point of concentration. We use it when we are burning the midnight oil to finish a vital business report, write a final term paper, or see a child through a serious illness. With a goal firmly in sight, we can move heaven and earth without being unduly distracted by discomfort or even physical pain. The warrior has several means for demanding that we be goal-oriented. He gives to us a sense of mission or calling, an awareness of being asked to transcend narrow ego concerns by focusing on some special task. Leaders in any field, artists, musicians, reformers, teachers, doctors, ministers, fathers, are often called through the noble spirit of the warrior. He gives help setting goals and then gives us the energy we need to achieve them. Self-discipline is the hallmark of the warrior. We are all familiar with the discipline of the body associated with training for athletics or the martial arts. Men involved in these endeavors must discipline their bodies to endure pain, expand their capacities, and achieve skilled coordination of mind and muscle. The same degree of physical discipline is demonstrated by a fine artist's use of his materials and the musician's use of his instrument. What we may not realize is that the warrior's discipline is not limited to the physical arena. His will is applied even more fundamentally to the mind and the emotions. He offers us greatly heightened vigilance, sharpened perceptions, and the capacity to discriminate between friend and foe. These characteristics survive from a time when a snapping twig or a sudden hush had to be instantaneously interpreted as evidence of game or predator, or of an enemy best avoided or immediately confronted. This split-second reaction to danger is not so alien now as it may seem. When we walk along a deserted street at night and we hear footsteps behind us, the warrior immediately puts us on yellow alert. If the footsteps quicken, he moves us to red alert, ready to take evasive action. We cross to the other side of the street or duck into a lighted entryway. If our accessing of this aspect of the warrior energy is excessive, this heightened vigilance can become paranoia. In this state, a man's perceptions are amplified like an overloaded electronic system. We start to short circuit. We experience danger where there is none, or exaggerate present dangers. But adequate mental discipline will help us avoid these pitfalls of the warrior's discipline. The mental and emotional self-discipline that the archetypal warrior inspires has been elaborated in many cultural traditions into a spiritual path. Some examples of this we have seen already: the knights of medieval Europe, the Japanese samurai, and the warrior religions of Zoroastrianism and Mithraism. This same capacity for spiritual discipline has been exercised throughout history by practitioners of the world's contemporary religions as well. There were the desert saints of early Christianity who sat on pillars in the desert sun in order to subdue the temptations of the demonic. Jesuits subjected themselves to a harsh daily regimen of prayer and self-examination, even after posting themselves to the most forbidding parts of the world. Buddhist monks, Hindu yogis, the whirling dervishes among the Muslim Sufis all strive for a spiritual discipline to defeat what they believe to be forces of evil within their own souls. Frequently, a religion's founder provides the model for understanding the spiritual warrior. Jesus struggled in the desert for 40 days with his own inner demons. Buddha sat under the Bo tree, determined to pierce through his own inner resistances and gaze upon the core of reality. Muhammad wrestled in a desert cave with the spirit of Allah, demanding a revelation. These men were warriors in a depth dimension. Our best scholars, theoreticians, and researchers have similarly disciplined their minds in order to see more deeply into the hidden patterns and dynamics of things. Because of these inner directed warriors, the frontiers of human knowledge have been extended. These men and women have begun to map the outer world and our inner psychological space with impressive accuracy. The warrior imparts to a man the capacity to be faithful. The psychoanalyst Erik Erikson has shown that fidelity is possible only where there is sufficient psychological integrity. Integrity comes from integration. Hence, the consolidation of a personal identity, achieved by realizing an ego-self axis, is necessary to any abiding loyalty. As we actualize ourself, we acquire the ability to be faithful to the person we really are. As this happens, we recognize our true values, goals, feelings, beliefs, and preferences, and this in itself furthers our consolidation. And as this occurs, we find ourselves increasingly faithful to those who are important to us. We also become more faithful to organizations that embody our own values, whether they are the companies we work for or voluntary organizations such as political parties, community action groups, Masonic lodges, or churches. At the same time, we may find these organizations are so flawed, perhaps even corrupt or criminal, that they do not deserve our loyalty. In such cases, the warrior may call upon us to be whistleblowers, or to change the organization from within, or to abandon it altogether. The same process occurs in our personal relationships with other people. The warrior enables us to moderate our own ego needs and endure a significant amount of pain and personal hardship for the sake of an intimate relationship. He also helps us to break free of relationships that prove inordinately or chronically hurtful. Dysfunctional patterns, if unexamined, often influence destructive marital dynamics and combative relationships with children. Fidelity to a dysfunctional family pattern is the opposite of the generative loyalty of the warrior. Realizing this deepens our understanding of the ultimate nature of the warrior's fealty. He serves a transpersonal other and encourages men to do the same. The transpersonal other actually enhances the status of those relationships that are worthy of a man's faith. If we are not in a conscious and committed relationship with a divine reality, we will tend to experience our parents, children, friends, lovers, and spouses in idolatrous ways. Since no human organization or being can carry our projection of a God image, we are bound to be bitterly disappointed. But if we can withdraw our projection, and along with it our expectation that others will provide us with an unlimited mirroring, and redirect our expansive longings to an adequate transpersonal other, then we can relieve others of the inordinate emotional burdens we have placed upon them. We will be free to experience them as the beautiful and wounded creatures they are. We are then free to love them realistically and to be faithful to them with all of our mutual limitations accepted. This healthier relational dynamic stems too from the warrior's power of purposeful detachment. This is not an uncaring rejection of involvement. Rather, the warrior helps us to detach from behavior patterns of enmeshment, merger, or codependency. If caught in these neurotic patterns, a man is overstimulated by the needs, moods, and expectations of others, to the detriment of his true self. The husband who gets hooked into his abandonment anxiety every time his wife goes into a rage, and so capitulates to her perhaps unrealistic demands. The therapist who loses his temper easily with a particularly irritating client, one he is experiencing as his own repressed shadow. The minister who burns out on his parishioners' demands because he can't say no. The employee who panics whenever his boss expresses displeasure with him. All are failing to access the warrior's centered, self-assured detachment. This detachment is useful not only in distinguishing ourselves from others, but also in separating the deep self from our ego. We can detach from our ego only to the extent we grasp the inevitability of our own deaths. The realization of mortality is an essential part of the mystery of the sword. All warrior traditions incorporate the painful truth of the transience of the ego. A warrior's sense of urgency and intensified life comes from his realization that his days are numbered. When a veteran experiences nostalgia for his warriors, most often what he misses is this heightened appreciation for life. Once he made every day and moment count. Knowing what little time he has, he opens himself to the noblest of human purposes and learns a deep commitment to a transpersonal other. Native Americans called the detached perspective achieved by a man on intimate terms with his own death his long body. He can take a long view of his life as a whole, a life that transcends the individual moments of joy and pain. There are murals preserved by volcanic ash at Pompeii depicting the Dionysian mysteries. In one panel, we see a young male initiate gazing with shock and horror into a bowl filled with water. Behind him, a man holds up the contorted mask of old age. The bowl is held at such an angle that the boy sees the mask reflected in place of his own face. We can suppose the intended effect was to tear the boy away from illusions of immortality and set him firmly into the world of mature masculine responsibilities. In a similar vein, Carlos Castaneda writes in Journey to Ixtlan of the advice of the old Yaqui Indian sorcerer Don Juan. Quote, "Use it, the knowledge of your own death. Focus your attention on the link between you and your death, without remorse or sadness or worrying. Focus your attention on the fact that you don't have time and let your acts flow accordingly. Let each of your acts be your last battle on earth. Only under those conditions will your acts have their rightful power. Otherwise they will be, for as long as you live, the acts of a timid man. It isn't so terrible to be a timid man if you are going to be immortal. But if you are going to die, there is no time for timidity. Being timid prevents us from examining and exploiting our lot as men. Most people move from act to act without any struggle or thought. A hunter, on the contrary, assesses every act, and since he has an intimate knowledge of his death, he proceeds judiciously, as if every act were his last battle. Only a fool would fail to notice the advantage a hunter has over his fellow men. A hunter gives his last battle its due respect. It's only natural that his last act on earth should be the best of himself." Unquote. The warrior is a destroyer. He destroys the enemies of the true self. He attacks whatever is wounding and damaging, whatever causes despair, depression, injustice, oppression, whatever is cruel or discouraging or making demands that are abusive. The warrior's destruction clears a space for renewal and a new, more just order. Each of the fully expressed archetypes of mature masculinity must be balanced by and incorporate influences from the other three. The warrior integrate the dynamic structures of the king, magician, and lover. Together, the quadrated structures of the masculine self make a complex whole. The cohesive masculine self is composed of these four archetypes, but transcends them. The four archetypes interact in a mutually enriching and regulating way. The warrior serves the king. The king is the warrior's transpersonal other, the focus for his loyalty, the source for his causes. The magician gives the warrior aid in reflecting on his commitments. The magician enhances the clarity of the warrior's thought processes and strategies, and provides the warrior with inventive technologies. The lover helps keep the warrior humane and compassionate. In conjunction with these other archetypes, the warrior becomes an essential component of the generative man in his empowered wholeness.